Hello, hello, hello. Morning, everyone. Got things going here. Hope everyone's doing good this morning. I have been up since 5 a.m., so that's nice. Not really ideal, but life moves on. Usually I like to wake up at 6 or 6:30. Yeah, 5:30 is a little too early for me. I need my consistent sleep of 7.5 to 8 hours to be rested enough consistently, which is kind of annoying sometimes because I feel like as you get older, sleep is just harder. Sleeping like a baby is actually a skill, which I have lost. Looks like we had a crazy spike up pre-market. I saw oil had completely the opposite move. So pretty crazy action this morning. Yeah, I can fall asleep pretty quickly unless my mind's racing, which is 50-50. Um, but I have such a good consistent routine. My body's like very used to going to sleep at the same time. I mean, I fall asleep at like 9:30, 9:45 every day. And it snowed. I don't know if you guys can see this. Not probably very hard to see if it'll even focus. You can't really see it because it's all white, but there's like a foot of snow outside. So I'm not really going anywhere today. I'm in Denver. So everyone in Denver is having a crazy snow day. Yeah, crazy spike down in oil here. What is this? Gold? I actually do not need to look at gold. Um, I mean, this is a crazy spike that we had pre-market, and so I think the question is, are we going to come down and test a level like this? Are we going to come back down to here, where this crazy move started? Definitely a very, very unhealthy move that you can kind of see has already kind of reversed some. And we could definitely find support here. Nasdaq looks very similar. It's still full cam. Sorry. There we go. I don't do that very often, so I'm not used to having to switch back. Um, But yeah, I mean, I think the chart just kind of we got a big overextended move, and even from yesterday's close, like what is just looking at how much the market's up this morning, up you know, 0.75% for the SPY, and the Qs are up over a percentage, and I think we were up over a percentage yesterday too. Um, the market's kind of just going crazy. I mean, like if you're just anywhere buying long in the last month, you would have made money. It's just crazy to be in such a parabolic up move like this. I was kind of expecting some kind of breakout before, um, like in this area, we were just in such a chop range. I was assuming that this was going to eventually break higher before we actually had this reversal. And so, like to me, we're in a way you could say we were chopping for months. And so we're almost like not that overextended big picture, which is kind of interesting. Like if you just think about this upwards trend, if we were just continuing that, we're almost up to where this just kind of healthy grind higher was going. And we've had a pullback to kind of shake people out. That's really interesting to see. And then oil down 7% on the day, but like we're still elevated 95 a barrel. I don't see this going anywhere anytime soon. So I mean, Nasdaq is just trying to look at little levels. Like I think this is a great little support potential level for Nasdaq. I think if it breaks that, it opens the door to go down to here. And then after that, I think there's yesterday's close probably that makes sense for another minor support level. Same thing with the ES. Yesterday's close actually aligns up with the previous high. I'll just reduce the size of this box a little bit. So plenty of spots on the way down, I think. And then oil, kind of on the flip side, we've got the previous lows that we are just ripping back up through right now. There's kind of this spot where we might find a little resistance. It looks like here's kind of that similar on the NASDAQ and the ES. Like this is a little similar support, like this guy right here. Oil's just got the, the opposite of that. So I think if things I think are pretty correlated this morning. So definitely want to be watching both of these since they've got such a crazy move going on. And then, on a 1 minute chart, looking at these, I guess I can look at a 5 minute chart too, actually, here in a second. I mean, 5 minute chart looks like we're just kind of in this downtrend until proven otherwise, giving this back up essentially. This is kind of my main thing that I look for, right? Is unhealthy move up, it's got to reverse. That's what I like to see. And what I like to reverse, I like to try and catch this move down. Obviously, it happened pre-market, so that's a bummer to miss out on a big move like that. But just looking at, that's where I find my edge is here. We had a big, crazy move up, reversed. Big, crazy move up, reversed. That's to me, what I want to be looking for. And even looking back here, we had crazy moves, reverse, crazy move. This one didn't do as much. But to me, that's where I find the most obvious edges in the market for reversal trades. And so that's why I like to look for that stuff. And so I'm going to mark this overnight high. And so, seeing that is good. Because it does show that the market still has this kind of reversal potential, even if we're in really such a massive uptrend. I see it as we're in an uptrend, but there's still opportunities to take shorts and obviously look for longs too to get with the trend. And so today might be looking for a long. If this looks like it's going to slow down, and oil here is just ripping higher, and that might come up here, kind of get back to a healthy spot, and then look to continue its trend lower. So that's kind of where I feel like I'm at this morning. If we go test all-time highs, I would look for a short, but just with how bullish the market is, new all-time highs are trickier to go against. I think it's kind of that time right now where it's like longs are probably better. And it's a little trickier to look for a short, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. My audio is cutting in and out. Is anyone else having audio issues? Three ads, I'll turn those off. Those shouldn't be on. Sometimes the setting, YouTube just auto turns ads on. And obviously for live streaming this, that's horrible. Having an ad pop up mid trade or something is not ideal. So sorry about that. Cool. Good to hear audio is fine. So news. Let's see what I don't think there was any news today. At least major. Obviously, the market is still very oil news driven and Middle East news driven. But in terms of news today, we do have oil inventories, which is kind of interesting these days. But last week it didn't really do much. We watched it actually last Wednesday. It happens every Wednesday. And last Wednesday, I believe it was kind of a little bit of a spike, but it didn't actually do anything. And so that's not really something to pay attention to, I think, too much. The oil will definitely slow down and wait for it, start to get choppy, and then it might spike a little, but then continue its trend. That's usually what I've observed with that. And then FOMC member speaks. That's not really going to do anything. And then we've had news beforehand at 8:15 a.m. That looks like it was right here. Kind of just a little spike. Didn't really do anything. Market kind of just continued in its downtrend. So that's kind of mainly what I'm seeing. In terms of big picture bias of direction, I mean, I think the big picture is still we're in this uptrend. If you just zoom out, we're in a massive uptrend. I will say though that if you think about it, the last 2-3 days we've just been in a crazy continuous uptrend. I actually want to look at this on a daily chart here too in a second. But we're definitely starting to have some spikes and strong reversals. And so we could, just for even a few days, we could go into some volatile range, kind of like this. Like we could just sideways range for a little bit. A lot of times these move up, sideways range, move up, sideways range. That seems like what the market's typically in right now. And even the ES on a 15-minute chart, kind of similar, move up, pull back, move up, probably go into some, so I think it's more likely we go into some sideways action, which I think is going to be good for reversals and my strategy. But obviously if oil starts to just tank, something could happen. I don't know if you guys have any idea. I haven't looked at if this is what news this is based on. Obviously, I'm assuming it's something in the Middle East. Uh, but theoretically, if oil is going down, it's some news that makes the market happy that there's less risk in the market for it going down. Zooming out to a daily chart for the S&P 500 here, we're kind of just, I mean, this is kind of what I was talking about a week ago is we, I think everyone was thinking the market was going to pull back here, and instead it just kind of chopped and grinded higher. Um, Obviously, at some point, this crazy uptrend is going to have some kind of pullback, and probably is going to catch a lot of people on the wrong side. Uh, but I think we'll have to wait until that happens. I don't think this is an uptrend that you want to take a big bet against because it seems to be just gobbling up any and all pullbacks. Nasdaq on a daily chart is just, I mean, this is insane. I don't know if I've seen this type of move since maybe COVID. I don't even know. I don't even remember what the daily chart of COVID looks like. I feel like COVID on its V bottom had a little bit of a pullback here and flagged out for a little while before it kept going higher. Versus this is just, I mean, this is barely even slowing down on the Nasdaq side of things. So, it essentially hasn't made a new low on a daily in over a week, which is pretty impressive. US and Iran might have a one-page agreement to end the war. Interesting. Yeah, I guess some of that is like we'll just see how it goes, because it just seems so much back and forth and he said she said at the time. In terms of like uptrends, I mean, there's not really. I mean, maybe you could say this is an uptrend line that we've tested a few times, but because we bounced so far away from it, I wouldn't expect. This is kind of a rule for me with uptrends or downtrends, just trend lines in general, is it'll hold it, but as soon as it gets so far away, by the time it comes back, it's not really going to test it very well. By that point, it's been so long, and so the market's probably changed by then. The trend's over, even if it hasn't broken it to the downside. A lot of times, there's a channel in place on the other side, and it's broken the upside of that. Same thing with the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq's clearly kind of broken it. It's kind of started to go sideways even more a little bit. It's not 45 degrees. It's not healthy. Yeah, I mean, healthy in what in what way? So I mean, main levels this morning, just to kind of run through those a little bit for anyone new coming in. Mainly just looking at overnight high, previous yesterday. Actually, this is an overnight high as well, like last night. But kind of just looking at this price action we have, potentially seeing if we bounce here, potentially seeing if we come down to this move here where this move started. To me, this is an unhealthy move, and we're going to likely give the unhealthy move back. And so this would be, to me, an inflection point in the market where that could potentially shift. We could also just bounce here a little bit and keep going. And then the next kind of spot I like is the close of yesterday, because we clearly closed and gapped up, but we had like a little spot here. I'll just zoom in a little bit. A little spot here, market opened up, tested that again essentially, and then kind of just went up from there. So to me, they're not great reversal zones. When the market's moving up so drastically, you don't really have time to, the market's not giving you a double top, and then the third time it tests, you can say, okay, that's a strong zone. I'm going to look for a reversal off of that. You have a lot of one touches that you're going off of, and that's just kind of the nature of a very trendy market. And so it's about trying to read into kind of like the little things. The S&P 500 is pretty much the same story here of the levels I'm looking at. Um, and being able to anticipate of, okay, well, just based on how the trend looks, when is it more likely that we go into sideways action and you can start opening up um, that kind of trading strategy. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. Oil here. Oil, actually, I didn't look at oil on a daily chart. I mean, oil has pretty much just been doing kind of, I think what I said roughly here is I think it's just in this sideways range, you know? Um, I don't think the Middle East is really going to escalate. Obviously, anything could happen, right? To the upside or downside. But to me, it seems like it's unlikely to escalate further to where oil goes even higher. And it's unlikely to de escalate enough to where we just go back to the normal oil price. And so I think there's just so much back and forth and uncertainty that we're just going to be ping ponging at high oil prices for a while. And it's just going to be, the market's just going to be triggering off of overnight news or random Middle East news. Who knows? I'm not going to try and speculate on manipulation and all that stuff going on. But, every time we have some kind of news, we have a crazy move. But big picture, we're big picture, we're still at 95 a barrel. We're still in this large range between, I don't know, 110 and 80. And so that's just elevated oil prices. And so that's, I think the major takeaway and thing to think about um, with oil. In terms of what I think it's going to do, it's kind of just the opposite of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ right now. They're definitely very correlated this morning. Big sell-off, and then I'm just looking at, okay, here's kind of a potential resistance, here's potential resistance, and then kind of yesterday's or this major support we had actually, I think is another potential resistance. So right now, I think we're just filling this unhealthy move. And, maybe we could reverse here and continue lower if things are going to continue. And there's this kind of unhealthy move on the way up even. Or there's this kind of big fair value gap here and here that the market might want to fill. Because before, oil wasn't in a healthy trend. So maybe we come up to here, get back to this healthy area, and then just continue the trend down. That's totally possible. And so definitely going to be watching that. I'm going to switch it over to a 1-minute chart now, just to kind of see. And that's what I think I'll probably be watching it, as the day kind of unfolds, and to see, is that going to reverse it, and see how that plays out with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. And so here on the NASDAQ or S&P 500, it looks like we maybe have just like this. There's kind of this trend right now. Could be trying to set in a little double bottom, testing the pre-market low. And then that's kind of what I'm looking at right now, is seeing how this downtrend we're currently in. Could almost say we're in kind of a little channel here. And to see how that plays out. The reversal window seems to have switched or shifted. I can definitely see that. I think the hard part is sometimes reversals can happen at any day, at any time. My reversal window that I like to aim for, 9:40, 15 minutes and 30 minutes after the market open, that's where I've seen the most consistency. But that doesn't mean there can't be, reversals before or after. About 6 minutes before this opens. I mean, the nice thing is today we've clearly got volatility, and so that's good for looking for a trade this morning. Uh, Obviously, anything can happen. We've definitely had volatile pre-markets, and the market just opens and sits there, which would kind of suck. But it's just about being ready for if a trade and setup does happen, and then going from there. Any day things can just like go crazy. Can I make my screen full size? If you're on the vertical version, um, go to my homepage on YouTube, and you can pull up the main stream, and that'll have the horizontal version. Yeah, I wouldn't. Can I suggest a prop firm? I won't. Because I think if you're just beginning, you should be demo trading. Prop firms are just gonna eat you alive with fees because it's as a beginner, it's really hard to pass and actually make money from them. I think I saw a stat the other day that the average eval costs like $800. I don't know exactly the details on that, but just thinking about it could be a lot of money to just pass an eval versus even getting a payout is kind of crazy. Um, well, I think how it works is it's the average in terms of like people failing, having to pay a reset fee. Um, and so I think that's kind of where that theoretically bloated number comes from. Not just that it costs you $30 or $100 to try to get one the first time. It's more of like, oh, you blew an account, you have to reset. Blue account, you have to reset. Months have gone by, so you've had to pay the monthly subscription multiple times. Trading takes a long time. A lot of it is just spending time in front of the charts. And prop firms, to me, you're essentially just paying a lot of money to demo trade at the end of the day. Um, the way they're set up is great if you are actually already consistently profitable and can pass, but for the majority of people who are beginning, that's not the case. Couple minutes before you open. What trading style do I teach? So anyone who's just coming in or new, I am trading the futures markets. I'm trading the S&P 500 index futures and the Nasdaq futures, just the major indexes. And then essentially, the trading platform I use is called NinjaTrader. And what I essentially look for every morning is I look for a spike in one direction and then a reversal. The rough idea is I like to see unhealthy moves like this. Fair value gap indicator shows you an unhealthy move, but you can also just look at it on a chart. Market goes crazy. And then I would look for, okay, we're at a reversal level. I would look for something like a double top. And then I would bet that the market's going to go lower. And then I would look for this move to reverse. Now, granted, pre-market, that's already kind of happened. But you can see here's kind of another example. Big unhealthy move, slows down, reverses, gives that move back up, and then it starts going in the same direction. And so that's what I look for. And that's all I do. To me, simple trading made it way easier for me to be consistently profitable. I struggled jumping from strategy to strategy, like I think a ton of people, and trying to do too much at once and almost making it stupid simple made it easier. And then I'm just super patient and disciplined in waiting for that. I don't take a trade every day. Um, I would say I average 1 to 3 trades a week. But the idea is sizing wise, I risk $1,500 right now. If I get a good swing, it's like I don't need that many trades to make good money. And so that's kind of how I deal with it. Hold on, I just got an error. I just got an update on one of my risk reward tool. So I'm just kind of testing it just to see any bugs. It looks like I just got a little bug, so that's kind of annoying. Market's pretty much open. Right now, we might just continue this downtrend, or we could reverse right here. Nasdaq has definitely pushed lower, but we've actually filled the move now. I definitely will be looking for a long down here, but obviously I need my checklist right here to show up as always. I'm not just randomly buying or trying to find trades for content. I'm religiously following my specific strategy because that's the only way I have found to be, that makes you successful in trading. Just kind of run through things as people come in. Morning, everyone. Quick rundown of my levels and what I'm looking for. Big spike this morning. And so mainly I'm just looking, this is a 15-minute chart. I'm mainly just seeing, are we going to bounce off of this level, this previous high, or give this whole move back up? That's on the S&P 500. The NASDAQ is a little bit lower. I'm actually going to delete, I won't delete that yet. We've given this move back up. So this is an inflection point, I would say, where we could bounce. And then oil is very, very similar. This oil on a 1-minute chart, big sell off. Kind of got a couple levels on the way up to see if that's where the market wants to reverse. There's really no news this morning. There is oil inventories at 10:30, but based on how the market is and how they normally act, I don't think it's going to really do anything. And if I want to look for a bounce off of this level, because I totally see the potential to bounce here and continue the trend, because overall, even on a 5, we're in a big uptrend. We might have got a little overexcited pre-market and then recovered from that, and then the trend might just continue higher here. And so if that's the case, I definitely want to try and take advantage of that. But as always, I kind of want to see the first 5-10 minutes of the market. And if it just rips in the first 5-10 minutes, that's okay. I would then shift to see, do we come up here and look to reverse? Thinking that big picture, I kind of think that we are looking at a 15-minute chart here. I think we've moved up, gone sideways, we've moved up again. I think we're more likely to do a little sideways action here now. Same with the NASDAQ. Clean up move the last few days. I guess this is really yesterday, but we're definitely in like move up and potential sideways action territory. So I think a trade either direction is totally possible today. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. So hopefully that makes sense. A lot of the answers on how my strategy works can be answered by going and looking at my YouTube videos. I try not to do it too much in my live streams, as a lot of people here are kind of more familiar with that. And frankly, I'm focusing on my own trading too. It's going to be pretty hard for anyone super new to understand from a live stream, because especially someone focusing on trading, because there's a lot going on. But as I see a trade potential happening, I will explain it as best I can. Strong little bounce here. I don't really see any potential resistance spots on the way up that are worth marking for either of these. Like there's super minor one here, but I wouldn't really care about that until we've already sold off from it. There's not really an area up here that I want to short. This is just middle of the range. It's not smart to. I don't like playing in the middle of the range. I like to wait for it to be at the extremes. All I got is water this morning. No, how come no reversal at the open? I don't trade right at the open. Um, to me, I hindsight, it can look great of buying the bottom here at a reversal zone. But so often the market opening couple minutes can just be, it's just unknown, and to me it seems like too much. It's too much of a gamble. I like to um, see what the market does in the first 10 minutes. It allows you to get a feel for how the market's acting. Based on the overnight action, that can give you an idea. But sometimes the market will open up and do something completely opposite, or it'll all of a sudden open up and just sit here in a crazy chop fest. And so to me, I like to wait. I pretty much have a rule of waiting 5 or 10 minutes to see something that I like. And so here, maybe we set up a head and shoulders like this. Um, and, potentially look for like kind of a long right here. But this also looks like it could pull back even more. And so that's kind of, potential of what I'm looking for. And again, I'm not looking to do a quick little scalp. I'm looking to see, okay, when does the main trend show me that it's going to potentially reverse? I find that way easier to do over the long term versus trying to scalp every move. I think that is a over glorified way of trading, that in reality is extremely hard to execute for most people. If you can do it, more power to you. Everyone's different. But to me, being patient and looking for what I like to look for, that works way better for me. Kind of seeing if it looks like we're just going to pull back and make a little higher low. I could see the ES, like there's just this minor little resistance level here off of these pre-market. It's kind of a little easier to see on a 5-minute. We kind of had a swing up here and sold off. I'm just drawing that to kind of help me see the minor moves in the market, what they're pinging off of. NASDAQ definitely looks stronger here. It's a little early for me to want to jump in a trade on a break of this high right here. To me, I like confirmation on the S&P 500 more than the NASDAQ, because the NASDAQ to me is can be a good asset to trade, but if the S&P 500 isn't showing kind of that strength as well, I find it harder for the trade to work out. And sometimes that doesn't work, but to me, the S&P 500 is a stronger signal. And if these aren't correlated or aren't aligning up, even if the Nasdaq looks like it's making a higher low here, to me, I see the S&P 500 actually just still trending lower, and so it's likely to just drag the Nasdaq down, or a long not to really work out. And to kind of look at oil just to see what oil's doing. Oil looks like it could be, it's in reality, it's just having a little bit of a pullback. I think the question is, does it pull back and just break out and continue higher? That would continue us to the downside. Or is it starting to top here? This is a little bit of a lower high and it starts to pull back down. And this is the tricky part about the market open these days, and why I like to be patient and wait is I feel like there's a lot of FOMO generated in the first 15 minutes. Even for me right now, I feel a little bit of it just because there's so much movement and pre-market. And so it feels like, oh, there's potential for that to continue. And so many times recently, it'll have a little whip like this, and then it will just sit here for like an hour. And so, to me, that's not great trading. I don't want to enter in that. To me, it more looks like we had a little spike here, and we actually might give this back up. NASDAQ is trying to go higher, and so both of these assets are kind of fighting each other right now. And if the ES looks like it wants to bounce here, I'm more into taking a long. The NASDAQ might be gone by then, and I might just enter in on the ES because I'm okay with that. If that's showing a signal to the upside, fine. But I frankly think this is going to have a pullback. That's kind of my intuition right now. Oil's kind of pushing up a little bit. It's kind of had this push lower that's kind of faked out. This platform is NinjaTrader. There's a link in the description if you want it. NinjaTrader also has a demo trading tournament going on right now. And so it's the prize pool for it is real money, but you just demo trade. And the prize pool is like $250,000. The spot seems a little bit like yesterday, where kind of what I was talking about yesterday of trying to take spots where it's like it's kind of more of a B setup versus an A plus setup, um, in that kind of gray area. And sometimes it's the hard part about that is, um, I feel like a lot of times these can get you in trouble, wanting to be like, in hindsight, now looking at seeing like, oh, well, this is a clean bottom, jump in on the Nasdaq. It looks like we're going up here. Um, but the ES looks like it's to me the ES looks like it could go either way. It looks like it's making a lower high right here, or it's just going to be choppy. Um, and it's interesting, like thinking you think about taking all these trades, but then in reality, like at the end of the day, all the only thing that matters is your P&L. And so it's like if you skip some of these trades where you maybe would have lost money or won money, um, the big thing is like, does it actually affect your P&L positively over time? And that's not always the case, I think, because it's easy to get. I find whenever I try and be a little more aggressive about taking not as high quality trades, some of them will work out, um, and sometimes it can be positive long term, but the it distracts you, I think, sometimes from the really good setups, and it also drains your mental capital. Your decision fatigue is higher, and so you can't necessarily take advantage as much of the bigger, better trades where, um, I find I make the most money and I can size up really high. Why do I prefer standing? I just like it. It allows me to feel more active, and focused. I think sitting it's easier to make it makes you more lethargic. So it looks like S&P here is finding a little strength. My worry is that for to the upside is that oil is kind of just pushing higher here too. But we might be losing that correlation. It's not, this isn't really a spot. I would look for a trade normally. And so it's tricky seeing the potential to go up. Um, hold on, I gotta re-download my normal. Where'd that go? I need to reinstall it. My new indicator just isn't working great, and I don't want to deal with it right now during trading. Not an ideal time. Now the question is here, is this actually going to sell off? I like this as like an aggressive little entry, to be honest. I just see the potential of timing. It's got a little punch higher if it looks like it's going to reverse. I don't know if I'll be able to get this indicator to change. That's frustrating. Because to me, it looks like we've got an unhealthy move. It's not really a great reversal zone. That's the thing. I think the thought is, are we going to bottom here? I like to see a little pullback here, and then it look like it's going to fail before going short. Because I think the thing is, this can. Okay, that happened really fast. Is this going to be all it does? And that's frustrating that it just did a 10-point spike lower because that's not something I want to chase. To me, that just filled the gap of what I would want to look for um, before it allows me to go break even. And that could just be a bait lower. The NASDAQ could just be going up after that, but also it's just, I don't know. I'm starting to think we're just choppy now. It's just not, this week has just been not tradable. There's just been like random, even yesterday we had this, just crazy spikes, which is not tradable in for me. It's just not methodical. I think the question is this going to be just a little fake lower and get us going higher, which is something to look at. I would want to see it essentially do this. But if it's just going to chop and whipsaw, it's not a great signal. In terms of a 5 minute though, you can see it kind of looks like a head and shoulders, even on the NASDAQ. So I definitely like that. That actually is a signal I definitely do like. And so to me, big picture, the big picture trend is actually looking pretty good in that sense. If this on a 5 minute is going to reverse, even if it takes a couple hours and I can jump in on that, that's okay. So I definitely like that. I think that counts as a reversal move. We don't have the greatest unhealthy move down, but I think trend break is there too. I'm not going to necessarily jump in on a 5 minute, but frankly, jumping on this swing is basically jumping on a 5 minute anyway. And it might be smart to have actually a little bit of a wider stop here. I'm okay going a little smaller size here. I think I'm going to do it on the NASDAQ. That's actually more bullish. Even though the S&P is starting to rip here. I want to wait for a tiny bit of a pullback. This might have been it though. More of the spot to enter in on. Even on a 5 minute, sometimes you got to be so fast. Or 1 minute, sorry. Oil's not really doing much. I think as a 5 minute signal, this looks really solid. And big picture, the idea is that we would just be reversing back up here. And then maybe I'm being just too patient here and I need to get in. I'm just such a person that likes to wait for even a little bit of a pullback. Just with the idea that I think it's gonna, it can like fake lower almost. If we had a spike like this, I want to see it do almost a 50% pullback. I want to see, does this just rip lower? And now we're just in this volatile garbage. Because otherwise there's no point in getting in long in this uptrend if it's just going to be like this and it's going to not really ever make actual money. And it's hard holding through these spots where it looks like it's just all of a sudden going to break out. But I think looking at the 5 minute, I think helps give me a little more confidence in the major trend of trying to go for this bottom here. I think this looks good bottom wise. And I think I would still just trying to think of, do I want to get in the NASDAQ or the ES? It's a pretty wide stop, but I think that's okay. I'm just going to let this see if it, as soon as it turns and prints a good candle. The ES is definitely showing good strength, but I want to get in the NASDAQ since that's been more bullish. Well, actually, if I look at the risk reward tool, it's basically the same. NASDAQ, I think, has more movement potential. My stop, because of how wide this is basically going to be still full size. If this continues higher. We are coming up to that 10 o'clock timing that did have super minor news at it. The only thing, if I go long the S&Ps, I can do smaller size. This market's so tricky right now. Nasdaq's just kind of sitting waiting. S&P's kind of sitting waiting too at pretty much the high there. And this is why I didn't, when we had this spike up, why I didn't just jump in. It's just with how this market's been, it just seems so easy that this could be kind of a bait and we could go lower. Pretty much at 10 o'clock. Just gonna sit back for a minute, try and be a little patient. Trying not to read into everything too much. It's easy to get sucked into the market sometimes. Just do a little stretching. It's hard too, especially with yesterday. Um, Yesterday I didn't take a trade almost. Felt a little FOMO at the end of the day. And definitely I feel like that's bled a little bit into today. The market feels like it's really got good potential. Just like, we had that crazy pre-market volatility, and then the market actually opens, and it's just kind of, it's moving, but to me, it's not really tradable. The potential of it going either direction is very high, and the potential of actually making good money seems lower and lower as time goes on. And it's hard sitting on your hands and knees. And now the S&P is kind of grinding higher. Nasdaq is actually going lower. Like, things are just all over the place today. I like to see both of these kind of going the same way. And here oil is just sitting for the last hour. We've kind of hit this area, and it's just starting to sit here. Maybe it's sitting and waiting for oil inventories, which is this red line at 10:30. Nasdaq looks like it's probably in this little uptrend right here, little up channel. The ES is, kind of slowly trying to bottom, but like we could just be in some crappy range right now. That's what it kind of seems like. I think even with this the pre-market sell-off, we're still up. The Qs are still up a percentage on the day. So the Nasdaq all the way up here it was probably almost like 2% then up overnight, because based on this move, we're pretty much at 50% right now. That means that we were pretty much at up 2% overnight. And looking at this swing, oops, this swing, I'll actually zoom out to a 5 minute, a little easier to see. Based on the swing we're in right now, from this high and this low, we're pretty much at the 50% retracement, which means that could be a spot where we actually start to move lower. NASDAQ, actually looking at it, it's basically same. And the SPY is up 0.8, and so it was probably up over a percentage and a half too. Is it typical for it to be so jumpy? Recently, but that's just because of how oil driven and news driven the market is. The market's so tricky right now. It's so much of just hurry up and wait. Like the market can't really do or isn't going to do anything until it has news because um nobody really wants to do anything, and that's why the market doesn't move sometimes, is because it just has these news spikes that oh, someone's fired a missile in the Middle East. Oh, never mind, they actually didn't fire the missile. And so that's why if you look at, just a 5 minute chart, why we had these crazy spikes is because they're just news driven. And then between those, sometimes it'll recover and the market is in an overall uptrend, but so much of the move these days has been happening like overnight or further into the trading day. And then we get to the open and, everyone's like, okay, now what? And so for me and my strategy and just trading, to me, it's really hard to trade that because the market just opens and it's just choppy. And because it's most likely waiting for news or it's trying to figure out how to react to the news that just happened. Um, and so yeah, it's frustrating to say the least because um, I'll get really close to spots where I see a trade and I see the potential for a trade, but then something like just like we just had, like this, there was a lot that looked decent about this, and then it just kind of started to just go back down. Um, and to me, these little moves are not tradable. They're not. I'm looking for more clean reversals, uh, and this whole week has been like this. Um, and so it's hard to deal with the patience and the FOMO that creeps in of sitting on the sidelines, coming in every day looking for a trade and being ready, and something not really panning out very well. Oil looks like it's actually spiked here, getting a little bit of movement. Well, I can at least say I'm happy I didn't get in a trade up here. Hindsight's 2020 on that, but it's hard in those moments to hold off and go with the read of uh, the read I had of I didn't necessarily like that spot. It felt like it could do this, and so that feels good, even though it's mentally things feel frustrating and draining right now. This feels unreadable compared to yesterday. I'm trying to think about what did yesterday even look like. Yesterday wasn't great either, but this just seems like it's having, we might be in this, but to me, like that's not super tradable because if I get jumped in up here, I would want to move my stop to break even at some point, and I'd probably just get knocked out at break even. And so it's like, is it even worth entering in a trade then if if I'm wrong, I lose full size, and a likely outcome is just break even. You got to think about the risk reward. And I'm looking at oil here and wondering, okay, is this a failed breakout? Do we just fake here and now we start going lower? That's what feel like I've been looking for a lot recently, but it's likely that we're just gonna stick back in the range. Flip side here could be, okay, do we make a higher low here now? And that's kind of it starting to go. Yeah, so much of it just feels like gambling right now. That's the hard part about trading is you want to trade, but it's important to stick to when you actually have an edge. Because that's when you actually make your money. Otherwise, trading is literally just gambling. If you just enter buy randomly, that's probably just as good of a chance to work out than you following a strategy and not following a strategy. Kind of one thing though is again sticking a little longer because generally that's the movement seems to be happening a little later, kind of around 10:30 time. A lot of the times it seems like the market has been opening and chopping for the first 45 minutes to an hour, and then we kind of get a clean move. So definitely watching to see if that's happening. Oil does look like it's starting to get a little bit of a move here going. The question is, does it move and actually start moving, or do we just was that just kind of a bait and we go back into hibernation? Because to me, this isn't. It's not necessarily a breakout or an impactful movement if it's still in the range. We can have just a spike, uh, but if it doesn't really break out or make meaningful movement, it's still just staying at the same price. Slept in and lost out on a crazy opportunity. If you're talking about pre-market, maybe. If you're talking about right now, I don't know. And it's hard having days where you just um, take zero trades and it's just you think about the $0 sign that day. But I find that and found over time, I feel like a lot of those days would actually be negative. And so even if you sit out a tiny bit more, um, the P&L is actually better long term. And that's the very mentally hard part about trading. And to me, this isn't something I'm just gonna buy. I'm not gonna just buy this big reversal candle here. Um, that to me, that's not my strategy. Oil's still moving down. Looking at a 5 minute here. Definitely a nice little fail breakout and a spike lower. Do I have a money target when I take a trade? Normally, I try and look for, I usually just use this tool I have, and I like to try and target 2 or 3x. And I just trail my stop and manage based on what the market's doing. And so right now, thinking about that, okay, thinking if I got in on this big candlestick spike here and I put my stop down here, um, to me, it feels hard for the market to come all the way up here without it doing something like this. And so to me, that's hard to actually make a profitable trade consistently doing. Um, the main thing is okay, could work out this one time, but does entering in chop like this normally work out in a good way? Not necessarily. Same thing with the Nasdaq here. Like if I jumped in here on this big candlestick with my stop below this, we would have hit like 1x here, but going up to here or here, where to me over time taking that trade and the risk reward actually plays out favorably, it's not really worth it. It's super just based on how the market's been acting. It's more likely we come up here and sell off. And I'm not looking to risk a trade on looking for just this small amount of movement. And it looks like we are. I mean, oil is definitely moving a little bit more now. So we could break out here, but there wasn't really a way of knowing that beforehand. For you, the sign's almost there, but not quite. Yeah, it's the days like this, I think, are the hardest part about trading, where it's so in that gray area and on the edge of yes you could or no you couldn't. And so to me, those are the hardest spots to deal with in terms of mentally of like, okay, what decision do I do? Because trading is all about your decision making. You have unlimited freedom, which is almost the hardest part about trading. You can do whatever you want whenever you want. And, you know, not acting is harder than acting a lot of the times. Because so many times it's easy to lean into that FOMO and indecisiveness and indecision. And I don't like getting in when I feel that indecisiveness, because to me that doesn't feel like an edge. The best trades for me are when I'm super confident in the read and the trend of the market and what's going on. That's where I want to be in. That's where I want to size up. That's where I want to take a big trade looking for 3 or 4x. And so that's how I like to approach things. And a day like this, where it seems so back and forth. Like my overall bias was to the upside, that thinking that we probably bounce down here. But just because I have that bias and the trend is kind of slowly playing out in that fashion, the way it's been acting though, of these big spikes and the divergence between the NASDAQ and the ES, it's just not it's not tradable. The NASDAQ here, it looks like it's trying to put in a top while the ES is making a new high. Earlier I was thinking about trading the NASDAQ because it looked a little more bullish. And then now all of a sudden the ES is looking more bullish. When your read is all over the place, to me, that's a big signal to step back. And just learning to recognize that is hard, especially when you can enter if you want. When was my favorite market to trade? I mean, pretty recently, I think before the Middle East action. If you look at a daily chart on the S&P 500, I mean, to me, like back and forth markets are great. Like this time was great because the market was so back and forth, but it was in a methodical manner. It wasn't as news driven. Um, Even now, I think there's been great opportunities and volatility. Even though we're in an uptrend, I think there's been good reversal opportunities. But it hasn't quite been tradable because of the skittishness from news. Yeah, the 1 minute chart is definitely messy, and I think I was looking at the 5 minute chart earlier, looking for seeing this kind of head and shoulders. But it's like, okay, well, if I enter in here with my stop down here, we'd still be at break even. Like the movement's just not here. Maybe if you hold a huge swing trade over the day, you can squeak out something. But it's just really tricky right now. Oil could be bottoming here, and we could just could go up, and that'll just push the market back down. Keep us in this just volatile back and forth. I need to look at gold and silver. It's not really something To me, I don't really like trading gold and silver. It doesn't have as much, the movement isn't as much of what I like on what I like to trade, kind of a 1 minute chart. And so um, I've done it a little bit in the past, and it just didn't work for me. I find just sticking to a couple charts, it is allows me to really focus and master them. I don't really, use other indicators um, as well, just because to me, looking at price action and kind of seeing the fair value gap indicator just as an easy confirmation. But even just you can see unhealthy moves just on the chart, and so those are kind of what work for me. I've added volume before, and I felt like it didn't really help me confirm or deny certain spots. It just added another layer that, in a way, just adds another variable that to me just added indecision or confusion on top of things. When the moves I'm looking for, I don't think need that. You found gold moves more like stocks and just like long-term trends, up or down, not necessarily reversal moves. Yeah, I think for me, any strategy you do, it's about finding the asset that fits your strategy. Um, some people like trading, like they like just looking at stocks because they are, um, they can find one that day that is moving the way they like. Versus me, I like to be able to just open the same chart and have a read on it because I've been watching it day in and day out. Oil also has inventories. I think it looks like we've had this kind of spike pre-inventories. Maybe someone got some insider info. um, that's a joke, by the way. But it's at 10:30 in like a few minutes. We might just sit here in this super tight chop range until that news. So to me, the ES is just in this upwards channel right now. Nasdaq, interesting enough, Nasdaq looked more bullish this morning. It sits in this full sideways range. This is definitely a scalper's market, not really more of a swing trader like mine. When do I think price action is going to turn normal again? Uh, that's anyone's guess. I mean, who knows how long this this news back and forth plays out. I mean, the current U.S. administration just has so much news driven back and forth that it's a lot of times in the past it's actually been good for trading, but right now it's almost like too news driven. When did I have the last good trade week? I think 2 weeks ago. Last week I just took one trade. This week I haven't taken a trade yet either. I mean, the market's just been garbage, and it's frustrating and hard to just sit here and not take a trade, especially in front of you guys. But that's just the struggle of trying to stick to a strategy that I know works in the long run. Big picture over months. Who cares if I have a week or two of not doing that much? If the next week or even tomorrow I take a trade where I make $4,000 on, you know? That's where it's the patience paid off. Even if it's hard to do that day in and day out, you know, it's that's the focus, right? The focus is to come in and make money long term. And if that means, you know, sit here for a little while every day and some days I don't take anything, so be it. You know, I'm not here to uh, be all hyped and make content, you know, in the sense of the more trades I take, the more viewers I'd probably get. I'm here to try and show you guys what it's like executing this in real time, day in and day out. And, you know, talking through my struggles of dealing with it and trying to just sit here. Because, you know, I know everyone else deals with that. And I think it's helpful to see other people, you know, it normalizes the patience and dealing with FOMO. Oil is here just sitting. Um, it's just waiting for this news right now. So we'll see if it kind of has a spike there in a couple minutes. Nasdaq's just kind of still sitting in this range. ES is really similar. I mean, ES is actually just slowly grinding higher. And anyone new, if you kind of want more about my strategy, go to my YouTube channel. I have a ton of videos about my strategy, how futures work. And then as well, just NinjaTrader right now is having a demo trading tournament. $250,000 prize pool. There's a link in the description. It's free to sign up. I think it's actually already like over 50% full in the first 2 days. Just watching oil here. See how this pops. You're seeing the minimum margin requirement for one ES contract is $500 in NinjaTrader. How do you trade with 50? That's because you want to be trading the MES contracts. They are a tenth of the size that require 50. It's 5K for the first prize. That's for their qualifying tournaments. There's technically 3 qualifying tournaments. So you enter in one of those, and if you do good enough, you move on to the final round. And the grand prize for that is 100,000. And you know, then other, you know, the prize pool, there's more people that make money too. I'm not participating in it just because I want to kind of focus on my strategy. I think it's better for people who are learning, and I also don't want to take potentially a spot from you guys. Two minutes here, kind of 1 minute really. The S&P does kind of look like it's trying to go to all-time highs. It's just slowly grinding up. And this is kind of the move I was, you know, I was kind of looking for this movement, but with how it was in the open this morning, it was just really, really tricky to get into. You know, because it just seems like it could just rip lower at any point. Got oil news here in a couple seconds. I just kind of like, because oil's so big right now, it's kind of interesting to see how this pops and opens. In the past, it's just caused like a little bit of a spike, and then the market will kind of, it'll just continue on the trend it does. It's not really big enough news that it changes the direction of the trend for oil or the S&P 500. It looks like, oil on a 5 minute looks like it's trying to start a little bit of a downtrend. It could just stay in this upwards range for a little while. But big picture, it was in a downtrend before. And so the question is it just kind of continuing that downtrend? Um, in kind of a little bit of an accelerated manner, maybe. So I think that's it for me today. I'm going to call it. Frustrating not take a trade again. Got really close, but I think to me the correct decision today was not take a trade. Um, it's hard in hindsight to kind of watch this grind higher, but to me there wasn't really a great entry spot for how I trade, and the Nasdaq is just a chop fest. It's hard trading right now. I don't think there's any other way to say it. Um, and always trying to deal with that pressure of wanting to trade. So at the end of the day, though, didn't lose any money, and I think that's a big thing. That's, I think people don't they underestimate a flat day and its importance in terms of long-term P&L. So as always, I appreciate everyone being here. I will be back tomorrow, and hopefully we just always being patient, looking for the setup when it shows up. So have a good rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.